What kind of set structure you use in your workouts can really have a big impact on both your progression as well as your motivation during your workouts. It can also help you break through plateaus and boost your workouts in many other ways. So let's look into some common as well as uncommon ways of structuring your sets and how these can make your workouts more efficient, your progress better, as well as how we can implement them into bodyweight strength training particularly. Traditional sets, or so-called straight sets, is a typical do X repetitions for Y sets with C times of rest in between. And then you usually divide it further into hypertrophy training or strength training, depending on how heavy your repetitions are. A traditional strength set would be something like 3 or 5 repetitions times 5 sets, while a traditional hypertrophy straight set scheme would look something like 10 repetitions times 3 sets. Like the name straight sets suggest, it's a very straightforward way of doing things. And we know it works. So why would we even consider different kinds of set structures? When we talk about bodyweight strength or calisthenics, we usually train strength and technique in order to reach a specific skill. But we can also use bodyweight training for hypertrophy and for building muscle. Our exercises can be mainly technical of nature, such as the handstand. It can be semi-technical, such as a handstand push-up requiring both an immense amount of strength as well as technique and balance, or it could be mainly strength-based, such as a dip or a pull-up. So depending on the nature of the exercises, we may also want to include these things into our programming to maximize our progress. In addition to this, some exercises may even be of a static nature, such as the plunge, the front lever or the back lever, which would call for a different strategy. In other cases, we just want to use programming to make our workouts more efficient in order to save some time. Changing our programming can also give us a motivational boost, because sometimes we just need to change things up. Changing our training strategy may also help us break through plateaus. Now, we already mentioned straight sets, so let me take you through a bunch of different other kinds of set types that you can use to spice up your training game. I'll go through all of them very quickly, so let me know in the comment section if you'd like me to delve deeper into some of these in a separate video. First up is cluster sets. Cluster sets means dividing a single set into several clusters or subsets. The traditional way of using these is for heavy and/or technical exercises, where you, instead of doing, for example, 5 repetitions, do 3 clusters of, let's say, 3 reps, 3 reps, and 2 reps with a short rest in between. For example, something like 20 seconds. Now, in the first few clusters, you have 1 or 2 spare reps, and then you go to failure on the last cluster or subset. You would then treat these 3 clusters as one single set and perform 3, 4, or even 5 sets, all of, for example, 3 clusters. But you could do more clusters, you could do 2 clusters. It depends on what you're looking for. In this particular example, you would end up with 8 repetitions per set instead of 5. And if you do 3 sets, you would end up with 24 repetitions instead of 15 if you had done straight sets. So this means we get more volume without adding more sets. And we also get to focus more on technique because a bigger part of the repetitions are further from failure. So if you do this properly, cluster sets will allow you to build more strength and power than straight sets in the same amount of time, while building at least as much muscle. So this can be used to make your workouts more efficient, but it can also be used in a smart way of programming as a means to force progress. So instead of increasing 1 repetition next week, you can increase 1 cluster or 1 subset in those cases where you just aren't able to increase that 1 repetition. It is also a great way of training semi-technical exercises where focus, form, and/or balance is important to the exercise or the progression. A similar kind of set structure is the rest-pause set. This type of set is used more to focus on hypertrophy and to intensify your workout. The idea here is to do an exercise all the way to failure, then do a short rest, maybe 20-30 seconds, and then do the exact same exercise again to failure, and repeat this once or even twice. An idea to turn this into a more bodyweight strength relevant set structure would be to do what I like to call the rest pause technical elimination set. Some bodyweight exercises are just too technical to be able to push yourself to failure. So if your goal is both to develop a specific technically demanding skill as well as building muscle, this set type might be a good idea. Here's an example. The handstand push-up is a very technical and strength demanding drill, and it's difficult to perform it to failure, especially in the early days of learning the skill. So what you can do is you try and do as many handstand push-ups as you can, freestanding, and then you go to the wall, and then you do a short rest, maybe 20 seconds, and then you burn out using the wall. This way you get to train the technique of the specific skill you want to learn, as well as focusing on breaking down your muscles to rebuild them bigger and stronger. It can obviously be used in easier progressions as well, and it can be used in a more traditional sense. For example, by doing pull-ups to failure, then taking a short rest, and then doing them to failure again, and then perhaps even one more time just to burn yourself completely out before taking a much longer rest, or even supersetting it with another exercise, which I will get back in. In fact, this set type can also be used to force progress if you're stagnating. So if you're stuck at a particular rep count of pull-ups and you cannot increase one rep from week to week, why not try and increase one set of rest pause instead? In my app, the Movement Trybe, I use quite a few different set types based on both rest pause sets as well as cluster sets in order to overcome the difficulty in programming for bodyweight strength skill, to improve measurability and to ensure both technique and strength progress. I also like using autoregulative programming in order to ensure progress without planning the exact volume or intensity increase from week to week. Now let's talk about drop sets. If you've been into weight training or bodybuilding before, you probably heard of the drop set. Do an exercise to failure, you drop off some weights, you do it to failure again, drop off some weight, and continue until your muscles are completely fatigued. It's a very popular kind of set amongst bodybuilders. But did you know that drop sets can easily be implemented in bodyweight strength training as well? And if you want to focus on building more muscles, why don't you give it a try? For the exercise you want to use, you choose a progression you can do about 10 repetitions of, let's say the pike push-up. And then you do 2 regular straight sets of this with regular rest in between. And then on the last set, you go completely to failure. Then you step down one progression, for example, to regular push-ups. And you do this completely to failure. And then you step down one progression once again. In this case, perhaps knee-assisted push-ups. And you go to failure, and you may want to stop here. In some cases, you can even introduce more progressions and step down. A similar approach can be done for pull-ups, for example. You start by doing as many pull-ups as you can, then you step into a rubber band of a particular strength and do as many as you can again to failure, and then without resting you step down to even a thicker resistance band. And here comes a crazy superset I did just for fun and to illustrate how to use supersets at different levels. When training static exercises, such as planche or front lever, we obviously want to do static sets, where we count seconds instead of repetition. Now, you can use any kind of set structure for static sets as well, but I recommend you reflect a bit over what's referred to as time under tension. It takes about 3 seconds to complete a regular repetition, oversimplified obviously, but I like to use these 3 seconds sort of as a rep count. This makes it much more easier to work with. You can use regular repetition strategies and turn them into static hold strategy. As mentioned earlier, I use this both in my own programming as well as in my app by implementing it into a cluster set-like structure, specifically for static exercises through what I call collecting second. Next up is superset, which means combining 2 different exercises with little to no rest in between. It can be done the agonist way, which means using 2 exercises that hit the same muscle groups, usually 2 exercises that hit the muscle differently in order to increase muscular activation. It can also be used in an antagonist way, which means using 2 exercises that hit opposing muscles. And this is usually what I recommend for bodyweight strength training in order to make your workouts more efficient. So an example here would be to do pull-ups, and then without rest or little rest, you do a push exercise. For example, handstand push-ups. You can also do this as an upper body, lower body superset kind of way, where one exercise is upper body, for example, handstand push-ups, and the other one is a lower body exercise, for example, pistol squats. You can even take this further and do what's referred to as tri or giant sets. It's the same principle, only that with tri sets you choose 3 exercises. For example, pull-up and handstand push-up and then pistol squats. This would turn it into an antagonist / upper lower body tricep, sort of. For giant sets, you would combine 4 or more exercises. I use both supersets, trisets, as well as giant sets in my own programming, and in my app, when combining this with rest, pause, or cluster set type programming, I usually refer to it as mega sets. Now that was more or less it. Let me know if you would like me to delve deeper into some of these set types in the comment sections, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to support my channel by hitting me up with a like and a comment, and remember to subscribe. You might be interested in checking out this video or even this video, and thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.